I've covered a lot of cases in my career: domestic homicides, cold-blooded kidnappings, even crimes that made the FBI scratch their heads. But this one stayed with me. It was June 20th, 2024, when a police scanner crackled with something that sounded routine at first: unidentified female body found in Lincoln Park, possibly early 20s. Call came from a jogger. Another tragic discovery, another young life lost. That's what I thought until I heard her name. Jocelyn 21 years old. The kind of smile that made people feel seen. Not just liked, understood. She just celebrated her birthday 2 days earlier, on June 18th. Except she didn't throw the party herself. Someone else did. Someone who, just days later, would be indicted for her murder. His name was John Ilbis, the man who once shared crayons with her in elementary school. A childhood friend. A quiet figure in the background of old group photos. And according to prosecutors, the man who strangled her that night in an Airbnb he rented just for her birthday. After gifting her sneakers. After offering her wine bottles labeled, "I love you." And here's what broke the surface for me, and for every investigator on the case. After he killed her, John used her credit card to buy a subscription to OnlyFans. That wasn't just a red flag. That was a warning flare. A crime of violence followed by a decision so vulgar, so strange in its coldness, it felt like a deliberate statement. Not passion. Not panic. Something darker. The body was found in a shallow grave, partially wrapped in a blanket. The area had been disturbed recently: loose dirt, scattered leaves, carelessly covered footprints. She was still wearing her birthday outfit. I drove to Syracuse that same day. The site was already cordoned off, investigators combing the area with long poles and cameras. Behind the tape, a family collapsed into each other, barely holding themselves up. That's when I realized this story wasn't just about a murder. It was about a performance of affection, orchestrated by someone who meant to kill. When you look at a cake with "Happy 21st, Jocelyn" written in pink icing, when you see that cake photographed at 8:12 p.m., and then learn she was already dead before midnight, it changes something in you. But we have to rewind. Back to before the wine, the cake, the promise of a celebration. Back to where it all started: a friendship, forgotten, and then revived, with a message that seemed innocent. Or maybe it never was. Jocelyn grew up in a tight-knit Ecuadorian-American family in upstate New York. Her parents worked long hours, her father in construction, her mother cleaning houses, but they poured every ounce of love into their daughter. She was the first in the family to enroll in college, dreamed of becoming a dental hygienist, and spent weekends babysitting her cousins or filming goofy TikToks in her bedroom. There was nothing flashy about her life, but there was something bright. John Ilbis had a different path. He and Jocelyn knew each other from childhood, same church, same school district for a time. He was the quiet boy who sat near the window, always a little off to the side. She remembered him, not fondly or unfondly, just vaguely. They lost touch somewhere in middle school when his family moved to another part of the state. Then, more than a decade later, in the spring of 2024, she got a DM from a name that looked vaguely familiar. "Hey, not sure if you remember me, but I used to know you. John from church? You look so grown up now." Most people would ignore that kind of message. But Jocelyn didn't. She was the kind of person who gave people a second chance. Or maybe she just didn't see a reason not to respond. They exchanged a few messages. He said he had recently come back to Syracuse. Said he was trying to restart his life. That things had been hard. He mentioned Ecuador. How they had roots in the same country. How it felt like fate, running into someone from the old days. And maybe it did feel like fate to her. Familiarity wrapped in nostalgia. Within 2 weeks, they were texting daily. Not romantically, not at first. She mentioned she had a birthday coming up. He offered to take her out, nothing big, just something small to celebrate. She laughed, told him he didn't have to. He insisted. She agreed. And that's when he made the plan, a private birthday party. He said he'd rent a space, make it special. She thought it was sweet. He said he didn't have many friends around, and it would mean a lot to celebrate with someone he actually knew. He bought a birthday cake, brand new sneakers, mini wine bottles. He put together a night that felt like a gesture of real affection. It looked like kindness. It felt like kindness. But kindness doesn't carry zip ties, or duct tape, or a plan to leave with only one of you breathing. Looking back at the texts, investigators found nothing overtly alarming. No threats, no pressure, just a guy trying to reconnect. But there was something subtle. He pushed to make it private. He never offered to invite anyone else. He was curating a moment, one that could only end in one direction. The night of June 18th, she left her house around 7:45 p.m. She told her mom she'd be home by midnight. She never came back. When Jocelyn didn't come home that night, her mother wasn't immediately alarmed. It was her 21st birthday. Maybe she stayed over with friends. Maybe her phone had died. But by the next morning, calls were still going to voicemail. No messages. No posts. Just silence. By noon, her family was driving around Syracuse, checking familiar places. That evening, they filed a missing person report. Police started with the basics, who she was last seen with. The answer came quickly, a man named John Chachagwase Elvis, a friend from the past. According to her texts, they were meeting at an Airbnb he'd rented for her birthday. Officers contacted the host, pulled the records, and within hours, they had what would become the turning point in the case: video surveillance. The Airbnb had a Ring doorbell camera and a motion-triggered hallway cam. The footage was clear. At 8:11 p.m., Jocelyn arrives, dressed in a simple birthday outfit: jeans, white top, sneakers. She's smiling. John meets her outside, holding a small pink gift bag. They walk inside together. That was the last time she was seen alive. What happened next, we only know in fragments, from forensics, from John's eventual confession, from what he didn't clean up. But here's what we do know. At 11:56 p.m., John reappears on camera. Alone. He's dragging something heavy in a large blanket. The shape is unmistakable. A human body. He struggles with it, takes breaks. Eventually, he loads it into the back of a silver SUV and drives away. There is no panic in his movements. No rush. He wipes down the doorknob, locks up behind him, turns off the porch light. Inside the Airbnb, police would later find remnants of the party: an uneaten birthday cake with "Happy 21st, Jocelyn" written in pink icing, 2 empty wine bottles, labeled with custom stickers, "I love you," a gift box with brand new sneakers in her size, and in the trash, a torn plastic wrapper from a zip tie. But the most chilling detail? Her phone and purse were still in the apartment. Everything about the scene said she never left that night on her own. Meanwhile, John had gone quiet. His phone pinged briefly the next morning in a wooded area near Lincoln Park. Then it was off. Police obtained financial records, and that's when the other piece fell into place. There were charges on her credit card. After midnight, a gas station, fast food, and then, bizarrely, a charge to a content platform, OnlyFans. It seemed absurd, petty, grimy, but it told investigators something important. He had no intention of hiding. He wasn't panicking. He was comfortable enough to browse adult content while her body was still in the trunk of his car. At 2:42 a.m., he used the card again, this time to buy cleaning supplies at a 24-hour drugstore. The motive wasn't clear yet. The timeline was incomplete. But what was already certain, this was premeditated. No one buys wine bottles with "I love you" printed on them for a casual birthday drink. No one plans a private night for two without telling anyone, unless they don't intend for both people to leave. By the next morning, an arrest warrant was issued. The man who claimed to be an old friend had become the prime suspect in a murder investigation. 2 days after Jocelyn vanished, her body was found. It was mid-morning in Lincoln Park, a stretch of quiet woodland just a few miles from downtown Syracuse. A jogger noticed an area where the dirt looked disturbed, shallow, loose, uneven. He didn't think much of it until he caught the smell. Police responded quickly. What they uncovered was heartbreaking. A young woman, partially wrapped in a gray blanket, her body dumped in a shallow grave barely 2 feet deep. Her hands bore marks consistent with restraint. Around her neck, evidence of ligature strangulation. It wasn't a crime of impulse. It was methodical. The medical examiner confirmed the identity: Jocelyn Toakiza, dead by asphyxiation sometime between 9:30 p.m. and midnight on June 18th, just hours after she arrived at the Airbnb. And while the forensics team combed through the scene, another trail, the digital one, was painting an equally disturbing picture. Using security camera footage, credit card logs, and phone data, detectives followed John's movements after the murder. 12:22 a.m., gas station, 2 energy drinks, and a prepaid SIM card. 1:13 a.m., subscription to OnlyFans, charged to Jocelyn's credit card. 2:42 a.m., drugstore, bleach, gloves, air freshener. 4:10 a.m., return to Airbnb, carrying cleaning supplies. 6:07 a.m., final ping from his phone, again in Lincoln Park, likely the moment he buried her. When police finally caught up to him, he was hiding in a relative's basement apartment, curled on a mattress with no sheets. The walls were bare, his phone wiped. But not before tech forensics pulled cached searches that included terms like how long before a body smells, how to delete credit card history fast, Airbnb cameras legal or not. Under pressure and confronted with the video footage, John confessed. No emotion, no visible remorse. He admitted to strangling Jocelyn with a cord-like object, the exact type never recovered. He claimed it wasn't planned, that things just got out of hand. But nothing about the night supported that. He brought everything he needed. He isolated her. He locked the doors. He tried, and failed, to clean up. The court documents would later reveal that his cleanup was clumsy at best. He'd wiped obvious surfaces but left fingerprints on the wine bottles, smudges on the bathroom mirror, and DNA on the inside of the blanket he used to drag her out. The prosecutors described it as a performance of intimacy masking a plan of violence. I would have said it more simply. He staged a birthday party as bait. Her family was devastated. When they were brought to identify her belongings, her phone case, the sneakers he gave her, the unopened birthday card from a cousin, they couldn't speak. Her mother collapsed. Her father stared straight ahead. This wasn't a random crime. This wasn't drugs or robbery gone wrong. This was a boy she once knew. A boy whose name she remembered from the playground. And somehow, she'd let him back into her life just long enough for him to take it away. To them, it made no sense. To me, as I kept digging, it started to. Because behind the horror, behind the wine, the cake, the subscription on her card, was something darker than jealousy or obsession. It was emptiness. A man with no life of his own, trying to possess someone else's, if only for a night. For weeks, the media called him a childhood friend, a loner, a jealous ex. But those labels didn't hold up under scrutiny. None of them explained why someone would kill a woman he hadn't seen in years during her birthday celebration, and then desecrate her memory by using her bank card like it meant nothing. So I dug deeper. What I found was this. John Chachaguase was never really who he pretended to be. He wasn't from Syracuse, not recently. He hadn't moved back. In fact, he'd never legally lived in the U.S. at all, not as an adult. According to immigration records obtained by ICE, John had illegally entered the United States in 2022, crossing the southern border near El Paso, Texas. He'd claimed asylum, citing gang violence in Ecuador, but missed his court date and simply disappeared into the system. No follow-up, no tracking, nothing. By the time he appeared in Syracuse, he was working odd jobs under fake names, couch surfing between distant relatives and acquaintances. He had no income listed, no health insurance, no government ID. The only consistent digital footprint he had came from hours of online activity, mostly adult content platforms, cryptocurrency forums, and anonymous message boards filled with angry, bitter men. And that's where the story took a darker turn. John had joined several incel-adjacent online groups, communities where lonely, disillusioned men vented their hatred toward women. Posts full of entitlement, rage, a sense that they were owed love, sex, validation, and that women who didn't provide it were the enemy. Investigators found screenshots from his phone, dozens of Reddit threads, private chats, and Telegram groups. In one message, he wrote, "All women care about is money and clout. They walk all over guys like me. I'd rather destroy one than be laughed at again." That line wasn't about Jocelyn specifically, but it didn't have to be. It showed what was bubbling under the surface, long before he ever messaged her. So was this personal? Yes. Was it premeditated? Absolutely. But it wasn't driven by love or even jealousy. It was about control. Jocelyn, by all accounts, was kind to him. Too kind. She gave him time, gave him attention, laughed at his jokes, accepted his invitation when no one else would. And that, in some warped corner of his mind, made her a target. Because if someone like her could make space for someone like him and still not want more, it proved his twisted beliefs that kindness was manipulation, that rejection was humiliation, and that intimacy was something to take, not earn. And the final insult? He used her own money to feed the delusion. Not for food, not for escape, but to buy access to strangers online, women who never knew him, never rejected him, never had the chance to say no. It wasn't just a murder. It was a narrative he built to reclaim a sense of power he never had. When I saw the court filings, the chat logs, the immigration violations, it became clear John didn't kill Jocelyn because of who she was. He killed her because of who he wasn't. And somehow, she became the canvas for everything he hated in himself. The courtroom was silent when the sentence was read. 23 years to life. That was the price John Shachadwase Ilbis would pay for the murder of Jocelyn Toakiza. The judge, Ted Limpert, called his actions unfathomable. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The weight of the word, life, said everything. John stood there in an orange jumpsuit, head lowered, face expressionless. No apology. No explanation. Just the same blank stillness he showed in every court appearance. Even when Jocelyn's mother took the stand and tried to speak, her voice cracking as she described the moment she had to identify her daughter's body by the shoes he gave her, he didn't flinch. The prosecution laid it out clearly. The premeditation. The purchase of birthday props. The credit card activity. The cold attempt to clean the scene. The online ideology that fueled it all. The defense had nothing to stand on. No mental illness diagnosis. No credible trauma. Just a man with no anchor, no roots, no future, and a festering resentment he tried to bury along with her. After the verdict, Jocelyn's family exited without speaking to reporters. I didn't approach them. There are moments where the job ends and humanity begins. That was one of them. A week later, I returned to the Airbnb. The building had already been scrubbed from the platform. The unit itself locked, blinds drawn. But the sidewalk was the same. The porch. The entryway where Jocelyn had smiled at him one last time. Her laugh still echoed in my head every time I looked at that clip. I wondered if she'd felt anything when she stepped inside. Any hesitation. Any gut feeling. We always talk about red flags. About trusting your instincts. But the truth is, predators don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they look like an old friend. Someone you used to ride the bus with. Someone who remembers your birthday. I drove to Lincoln Park after that. The grave had been filled in, the ground receded, the crime tape long gone. Just a flat stretch of dirt where something awful happened. A place that now looks like nothing. But that's the hardest part of these stories. The silence that follows. When the trial ends. When the headlines fade. When the public moves on. What stays behind are the questions. Why did she go alone? Why didn't he leave when she said no? Why does someone plan a night of affection and use it as a weapon? I can't answer those questions. But I can say this. Monsters don't announce themselves. They buy you cake. They write, "I love you" on a wine bottle. They smile for the camera. And then they take everything. So tell your daughters, trust your instincts. Tell your friends where you're going. And if someone reappears from the past after years of silence, ask yourself why. Because Jocelyn did nothing wrong. She opened the door. And someone else closed it.